rather than viewing neighborhood development, artificial intelligence, food systems, and international trade as separate conversations. This dialogue explores them as interconnected components of a new architect for community wealth and self-determination. Profound Conversation has to have this deep discussion. A discussion about economic development within a community that has been disenfranchised from economic development. A community that has been cut off from developing itself to be a power source. A community that has been utilized, has been burdened, has been taxed with building the community through its resources, but not reaping the benefits from those resources. Today, we have with us profound individuals with deep thoughts who have devoted their lives to uplifting the community, inspiring change, and creating a condition by which people are empowered to do better, be better, and live better. This episode of Profound Conversation examines what it takes to build an economy that is locally rooted, technically sophisticated, and globally connected, rather than viewing neighborhood development, artificial intelligence, food systems, and international trade as separate conversations. This dialogue explores them as interconnected components of a new architect for community wealth and self-determination. Welcome to Profound Conversation. We have with us Ali Nervis, founder of Grassroots Books and Cafe in Phoenix, Arizona. Demonstrates how a community bookstore can be more than a retail establishment through education, entrepreneurship, youth engagement, civic dialogue, and cultural programming. Grassroots illustrates how trusted institutions generate the social capital upon which every healthy economy depends. Welcome, Brother Ali.
Thank you.
Technology, or some would say tricknology, has been utilized to advance an idea, but also to paralyze a population. Damian Lamar expands the conversation to digital economy by examining how artificial intelligence, or some would say AI for ancestral intelligence, digital commerce, and emerging financial technologies are lowering the barriers that have historically prevented small and Black-owned businesses from participating in international trade. Having a conversation about the African Continental Free Trade Area, his work challenges us to imagine a future which intelligent digital infrastructure democratizes access to global markets rather than creating a concentrating opportunity around the largest population. Welcome, Damian Lamar.
Thank you for having me.
And Eric Jackson, shaper of internal being essence, an educator, a filmmaker, an author, a founder of Black Yield Institute in Baltimore. For more than 11 years, Jackson has advanced one of the most nation's compelling models for Black land and food sovereignty through organizing rooted in Baltimore's Cherry Hill community. Black Yield has demonstrated that food justice, community ownership, mutual aid, and economic development are not separate endeavors, but mutually reinforcing systems capable of transforming neighborhoods from the inside out. His forthcoming book, Life of Praxis, and a documentary, From Seed to Sovereignty, further illustrate the vision of liberation through institution building. Welcome, Brother Jackson.
Thank you.
We are here to have this conversation. You all have been advanced as premier thinkers in this space of economic development. Let's begin in this conversation with you, Brother Lamar. How did you come to this space to be able to conceptualize technology and economy and movement within a community? What is your story?
Well, it started during the journey started during COVID-19, where we realized that with the lockdown, it was extremely hard for us to connect with Black businesses. So myself and a friend, we sought out to learn how to code and to build Pan African version of Facebook, so that way we could connect with one another, and we succeeded in doing it. Um, it was beautiful. We had African people on every continent on the world, like all on the platform, and we were able to connect with each other, communicate, share stories, gather information. Um, we had a digital bookstore with over 100 books. So then the seed was planted. Like, we need to globally connect with each other to create this community, because it's in this community that economy flows, that money flows, that we have opportunities with each other to make economy. Um, I Unbeknownst to me, AI was coming, and so when AI came, it actually sped up the development and the research and the research and the development. I can't even say that, the research and the development. So by 2022, um, I was using AI to like aggregate all the data in the continent, as it relates to our wealth, as it relates to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And what I found was that the African continent is actually positioning itself for us to trade with the continent. Um, that's the mandate that has been set, and it's up to young individuals to make it happen, make it so. Our brothers and sisters over there, they've set the foundation. Is for us to step off of it and take it to the next level.
I mean, that's the imperative right there. What you just mentioned about the last statement about being global, seeing yourself as global, that is powerful. We need to make sure on the front side, how do we help individuals in this space see themselves as global citizens, as not simply being locals. That's a real challenge, because many of us get stuck in this particular space of being Baltimore, being DC, being Philly, being Chicago, being whatever it is, New Orleans, right? We get stuck and don't know that we are global citizens while the entire world is engaged in the process of connecting globally. The Black world is left out of that conversation. When we talk about sovereignty, we'll come back to that. We'll dive into that. When we talk about sovereignty, economic development, we have to deal with what's happening with you, brother. Um, I don't know if I want to go to Jackson because that sounds good. This idea of sovereignty. Yes, let's go there. Brother Jackson, talk about economic sovereignty, sovereignty. What has been your work, and how did you come to do this work in Baltimore?
Yes, sir. Give thanks for the opportunity. Um, my work with Black Youth Institute started in 2015, or at least the founding of the organization, the name, the brand, if you will. But it absolutely happened before that. There is no way to tell a story about my contribution to building Black Youth Institute with others, and creating a pathway in Baltimore City for this specific focus on Black land and food sovereignty, without talking about what I come from and who I come from. And so, coming this story, it's even further. But as you mentioned in the bio, there's a book coming, so folks can learn more about that. But I'll say, when I was 14 years old, my grandmother passed, transitioned from the complications of diabetes. And I saw her struggle throughout my life. And then when she transitioned, it was just a tough thing for me. By the time that I was 19, that which was an emotional, personal experience propelled my political action, because I was learning in social work school about systems of oppression and how that apply to um, food systems, and learning about the food, how we get it, what the industrial food system is, and that this industrial food system that had been building since the turn of the 20th century, and really solidified sometime around around World War II. Actually, was the entire life of my grandmother and my mother, and myself, and my children. And so, by the time that I understood those things, I knew that I was going to commit myself to this work. I started organizing. The ideation for what became Black Youth Institute started in 2012. And by 2014, convened a group of people who became the first and second iterations of our Circle of Wise Counsel, or otherwise a board of directors. And we began to think about the fundamental question of how can we do both improve access to healthy, affordable, and culturally appropriate food while also building political power. And so we've been on the journey to do both of those things. I fervently believe that you cannot disconnect power building from producing food, aggregating food, manufacturing food, building business, and growing connections as a part of the ecosystem. There's also the economy. And, borrowing from this language of economy, the Latin, the etymology, economy meaning the management of home. The truth is we got to take care of our own homes. And we know that even within the context of the United States of America, nobody's going to, white institutions and large corporations don't want us to have a home.
The narrative of how you end up in a place is critical to understand, because it begins to, at some level, inform you of your particular position that you find yourself in. And I truly love this idea of sovereignty, right? I think that when declare oneself as being sovereign, to being whole, of being contained is important, as opposed to being a fragmented reality of somebody else. So sovereignty is so prophetic. So I appreciate that. Brother Ali, it was already mentioned by Brother Lamar about this idea of literature, reading, connection globally. You are an owner of a bookstore, and people know that to keep a secret from a Negro, you put it in a book. You have a book called Grassroots Books, and Juice Bar. So you feed in the mind and the body.
Yes,
Tell
sir.
your story.
The saying is create what you need, and that was definitely true for me. I came up as an entrepreneur. I always wanted to do business. My mom was an entrepreneur, and as I got further into it and working and realizing that the American dream was a nightmare, I knew that there was a different path for me, and so what brought me back to business and entrepreneurship was actually my activism. I started working in the community, organizing, teaching political education, teaching the history of the capitalist system that we found ourselves in, and how it has how it has just done so much damage to us, to our community. And understanding that one of the reasons why the things continue to happen to us is because we don't have a strong, solid foundation, right? We're not able to at least insulate ourselves from the harm that this system continues to wage on us. And so I determined that, with my little bit of background and my little bit of skills that I have in business, that would be my focus, is to build up enterprises that help to generate resources, that help to create jobs, that help to create opportunities, and do all the things that business does. And so really the bookstore, and another enterprise I have outside of this is really more of a hypothesis of, can we create businesses that are not solely focused on profit, right, that are more focused on uplifting community, of educating and being a benefit, being an asset, right? And to take it a further degree, what impact can it make if the people own it, right? So the goal for grassroots is to be a worker-owned entity, and potentially a community-owned entity. Try to figure out all the dynamics of that. But that's the hypothesis. Is can we do business in a different way, right? Outside of what America tells us is make as much money as you can. And so the bookstore was also an answer to a question of, as I said, I was organizing and trying to mobilize people who were not educated, who didn't have a firm understanding of the system that we were trying to dismantle, right? And it's impossible, right? Like Chairman Fred says, right? If you're not educated, you're going nowhere. And so that's what I kept finding over and over again was, people had to be educated first. And so we didn't have any bookstores, any Black-owned bookstores in the entire state at that time. And so, the goal was to create a space where the community could come together and build relationships and heal and connect and work together on problems that persist in our community, that even though we didn't create them, right, we still suffer from them. And so the two-pronged goal of this space was to educate and to bring community together, and then to provide a healthy alternative through the juices and the smoothies, and selfishly, my daughters like smoothies, so I wanted a space there where we could just, like I said, something that I needed, right? A community space where my girls could come and see themselves represented and see other people in the community, and get something that tastes good. That's also good for.
I'm moved by that, right? It's because you're saying that there was a dearth of content that a population could find about themselves, that your family could feed from that. The power of community coming together, coming together in unity and oneness is imperative. And the way that we sustain ourselves is one of the more sacred aspects of humanity. That's why people come together and they eat together. They do things together because several things that we do that sustain life. And one of those things is to consume substance food. And so you suggested that when we can put something within the body that sustains it, that allows it to flourish, and put something within the mind that allows it to be able to conceptualize a reality beyond imagination, it is there that we begin to find health, wealth, and prosperity. Powerful reality. So let's have this discussion. Let's talk. What do you see as the biggest challenge? Either of you, the biggest challenge in bringing a population together and getting them to move either economically, intellectually, or in this idea of being sovereign? Either of you, go for it. What has been the biggest challenge, the biggest hurdle?
I'll say I think one of the biggest things is, and it was talked about already, the idea, and that's been systematically injected, that we don't deserve the things that we wish for, the things that we hope for. In fact, we're socialized, I believe, largely in mainstream society to believe that we actually can't even dream for ourselves, that our dreams must come from someone else's imagination, particularly from European-centered understanding of the world. And I say that because what I've found in my work and just doing movement work across the country is that that idea that many Black organizers, scholars have talked about, that white ice is colder. It still permeates, and asking folks to come and support is just largely based on, and there are many ways that I can spread this analysis out, but I don't want to do too much. But that we, I think that it's difficult because of the injected oppression. And so I know we'll get to the point where we talk solutions, but I think that is difficult. And so when Brother Ali was talking about the way that Brother Ali was talking about the both of the enterprises and it coming out of activism and organizing, we've been using this language of movement enterprise. How do we actually, in the same way, and I definitely want to talk more about that. In the same way, how do we move away from profit as the central purpose, but actually convening people in regular everyday people doing regular everyday mundane things like playing cards, learning together, laughing together, dancing together. And I think that these creating these liberated zones or creating these spaces where we can be with each other is a part of the remedy. But I think it's just like, I've found that it's difficult for us to even see ourselves in a different light. And so this very quick anecdote. A mama once, a couple of years ago, when we run a couple of pop-up markets, but before it was a market, it was a farm stand. And the mama came to the table and pretty much said, hey, why is this food being sold? Y'all making money off the community with, in Baltimore, we call it a half and half. In other places, you might call it an Arnold Palmer or lemonade and, and iced tea. And with that in her hand, purchased from a Korean-owned establishment. And so for me, I was like, listen, this is the reason why we got to keep doing it. Not to condemn the mama, but to say, listen, I know that the imagination right now is that the only way Black people are supposed to get food is through food charity, and it's supposed to come from other people and what have you. But I really think that in order for us to be together and stay together, we just got to do mundane things together and normalize being with each other, and normalize dreaming with each other. So anyway, I hope that got to your question.
You were in there. You definitely hit it. The idea of interjected oppression and this notion of the liberated zones, right? I like the idea of liberated zones through movement enterprise. So we have to recognize again that a population, I think that what you're saying, have bought into their own inferiority through the conceptualization of European superiority and the manipulation of African and or Black genius for the population, for the purpose of advancing population. So I think that is spot on, that we have internalized that. And that's what Carter G. Woodson was saying, that when you control a man's thinking, don't worry about his actions. So Stephen Biko says that the greatest weapon of the oppressed, is the mind of the oppressed. And so we have to be clear about that. So a blockage. Go ahead, Brother Damien. What have you found to be a challenge in getting people to really get on board with this idea that you speak of?
One of the biggest challenges to our unity and our sovereignty is the balkanization in our communities and on the continent of Africa. It's so big, the problem, but really it's as simple as supply and demand.
Explain balkanization to us as
the division of the continent of 54 nations with no sense of unity. Nigeria trades more with the United States than it does with Ghana. So balkanization is the division of nations that are right next to each other. At one point, Europe was balkanized, and that's why we had a bunch of world wars and whatnot. But now they have the European Union, and they have some sense of camaraderie, they have NATO, like a single military force, a single currency, you know what I'm saying? And these are ideas that, have been the African Union and African countries were talking about for ages. You at one point had like the Casablanca group that was arguing for a United States of Africa, and you had the Monrovia group that was arguing for our present state of balkanization. And Kwame Nkrumah said, like, he was arguing way back in the day, like, we need unity now, one currency, we need one military, we need unity, we need these things now, because if we don't have it, if we didn't get it back then, he said that our oppressors were returned in the form of neo-colonialists, in the form of a checkbook, you know. And so now, why technology is important is because, you know, we spend so much money with each other that we are one of the, here just in America, we're a nation, an economic giant powerhouse, and it's been that way for over 30, 40 years. However, we're divided and balkanized communally, you know, in this nation. We don't support each other. And it's not because we don't want to support each other. It's actually because we lack innovation in our communities. 107 HBCUs, 3.3 million Black businesses, 25 Black-owned banks, and we've not quite yet figured out the innovation game. So we're playing catch up while they're taking leapfrogs when it comes to the digital. Like we use when it comes to supporting food, or you know, just circulating our business class, or wanting to buy food from a Black-owned business, or maybe I want to buy a smoothie and I can't, you know, come to grassroots. I should be able to have the same efficiency and innovation as a Uber Eats or an Amazon when it comes to supporting a Black-owned business. And then for our brothers and sisters who are struggling with the institutions that we have, if we aggregate all the institutions as I have, and I've looked at these institutions, we are actually playing rich. So the problem that we're having is that, you know, there's people spending billions of dollars to divide us. We lack innovation, and then we lack the information so that we can execute and mobilize effectively. And I think we're able to do that with, you know, proper unity, proper digital platforms. Africans in America send $110 billion to Africa every year in remittances. That's more than the loans that the African countries take. So hypothetically, we could invest and build Africa up if we just supply and demand it right. If we just connect these economies, if we just have community. Brother Ali, they sell smoothies here. Well, the brother Eric, he sells food. So there might be some business that could take place there. So it's just a matter of connecting the people so that we can have this community economy, and authoring the platform so that our brothers and sisters can connect with each other and we can tell our story. We can't rely on, you know, our oppressors or institutions that are not Pan-African to build the solutions for us.
Powerful. So you mentioned powerful, profound voices in the context of Pan-Africanism when you mentioned, of course, Kwame Nkrumah and the two different groups, the camps that were in different spaces suggesting what should happen for a population. But you had the Patrice Lumumbas and so forth engaging in a deep discourse. And they were, of course, attacked and annihilated, separated. But those that were more willing to get along with the oppressor tend to continue. I think people see that as well. They see what happens if you actually stand against the system. However, you're saying that if we simply understood the wealth that's within us, we can begin to move forward. Thank you so much for recognizing the things that block us. Brother Ali, are you able to come in and just say something in this last moment here that we have on this segment?
I agree with everything that's been said. You know, the only new piece that I would just add is just, you know, the campaign that's always running against us. You know, I look at it in frame of time. You know, this is hundreds of years in the making, right? And you know, a few decades of us, and really not even that, right? The arm and the boot is still on us, and so you know, us trying to reach our people who still don't yet realize who they are and what they are, right? And the system and the powers that be makes that extremely difficult, because as soon as we get close to having some success, right, the velvet glove comes off and we see the iron fist, right? And so we can't ever overlook that. We can't ever forget that, right? That there's so much that we're fighting against, that we're trying to overcome. And you know, our people are you know, it's happening, right? It is definitely happening. I get a front row seat to it, and it's beautiful to see the unity. It's beautiful to see people realizing what this system is, and what we have the power to do in this moment. But it gets difficult in spurts, because, like, we know American life is a sleeping pill, right? And people will forget. People will choose the easy route. People will choose individualism over our collective liberation, and that's something that we have to constantly fight against.
Mm. So this, I think you also presented in your presentation how you presented the solution, the answer, in the context of what you needed in your own family.
Yes,
That
sir.
we fight against this lack of awareness of self. You present that an answer to that with the bookstore and the knowledge piece. So you all present the problem, and that's what happens when you go to a medical doctor. You have to, first of all, analyze what is happening, what's happening, what's going on with us. And you all suggested that there is an enemy that's happening, that's blocking us. And the passage says that if there is no enemy within, the enemy without can do us no harm.
That's right.
You all have all challenged us to think deeply about the enemy within. You've challenged us to think about what it means to be sovereign, to be declared sovereign within oneself. You challenge us to think about the artificial barriers that we put up against one another, because we have been taught who we are and who we are not. You all have taught us just in this short period of time of what it means to actually stop and challenge a system, and not a system on the outside, but you've told us that we have to challenge the system on the inside. When I see you, do I see myself? Do I see you as somebody I can connect with? Do I see myself as being whole, as being sovereign? Do I see myself as being capable? That came from everything that you all said. We want to thank you all for this portion of Profound Conversations.